Hi everyone, my name is Katie Lynn Blazer. I'm currently a level 3 intern, and this is my reading practicum case study. To start off, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my case study student. A pseudonym for him that I will be using is Alex. He's in 2nd grade, he's 8 years old, he lives with his mom, dad, younger sister, and his 2 dogs. He enjoys learning about sharks, drawing, and spending time with his cousins. He is an ELL student, but he does speak English and Spanish. This is the same at home. His parents speak Spanish, but they mainly speak English at home as a family. For academics, he prefers reading and science subjects, and for hobbies, he plays baseball and he's on a team. After getting to know Alex and doing a few assessments with him, my instructional goals are the following. So the first one is comprehension. This is a big one. After talking with my CT, she actually had Alex in her kindergarten class, and he very much so struggled with comprehension. As far as not really knowing the difference between what, where, why questions, if that makes sense, he would just get confused with what you were asking, and this reflected in his reading as well, so that's a big one I wanted to work on with him. The next is decoding grade level vocabulary words. Sometimes I noticed when he talked he would struggle looking for the right word, and this also reflected in his reading. And it affected his fluency. And the next one would be improving his long vowel sounds or recognizing them as well. For my instructional strategies, specifically with read-alouds, I would always provide quality literature for Alex on topics that I thought he would be interested in. During this time, I couldn't tell you how happy he was to every single time we got to the read aloud portion. He was so excited about flipping through the books and looking at all the illustrations and predicting what would happen. And this was a big part where I focused on comprehension with him. So before the story, I would ask some comprehension questions or just get him warmed up about the topic of the story, and then throughout I would model comprehension, and then afterwards I would ask a few questions regarding seeing what his comprehension was from each book. Going into the guided reading, this is also where I focused on comprehension and also retelling and along those lines. So as we read, sometimes we were looking for the main idea and details, and sometimes we were finding the problem, the solutions, and the actual solution. So this all guided his comprehension as well. Other instructional strategies that I used were during gameplay and word work. So during these times, I mainly focused on decoding grade level words as well as improving his long vowel sounds and ability to recognize them. So for example, in gameplay, it wasn't always a fun game, it's more educational. So for example, he had to match sort all of the long vowel sounds. And then also the same thing with word work. We also worked on long A and short A. And then getting into decoding grade level words, he was able to use a word pocket that I developed, and I would give him a grade level word, and he would try to sound it out and decode it, spell it out. And we also worked on this in games as well. Going into my assessment strategies, some of these I've mentioned before, but for comprehension, we definitely use picture walks with almost every book we read together. He loved predicting, so at times I would let him predict before or during when we were reading what would happen next. And then comprehension questions I used throughout, so before we read, during, and then also mainly after we read. I would ask him more comprehension questions and see what he comprehended. And then going into decoding grade level words, we use chunking strategies, breaking the word apart, and also reading with the finger. So this also helped him a lot when he was reading. Sometimes he would give up on a word or kind of guess, but when I introduced these strategies, it definitely helped him to sound out the word and figure out what the word was. And then going on to vocabulary on grade level, I always tried to pre-teach vocabulary, and sometimes this would extend for a few weeks. And then also checking the picture when he's reading. And then improving long vowel sounds, making words and analogy charts. For my assessment materials and how I tracked my students' progress for all of our goals, I definitely started off with conversations with my CT. Like I said earlier, she had him in kindergarten, and this helped me a lot. Our conversations helped me a lot as far as where he was in comprehension. The next thing would be the self-assessments we did every day or Alex and I did every day with emojis. So he would just tell me how he felt about the content and the material we went over that day. And then going into my daily reflections, this is a great area where I was able to gather like everything that happened within each day and within each lesson plan, and just write down all my observations and anecdotal notes. And it's just a great place to keep like artifacts and like things that I thought of, or things that Alex said or said to me, and just to keep it in one place. Some more assessment materials I used to keep track of my students' understanding would definitely be recording. So I tried to record the majority of the times we met together, and I would look back on these and assess whether he was grasping those vocabulary or grade level vocabulary words. And then as far as our activities together regarding his long vowel sounds, I would always make sure to write it down and keep it and look back at it and see his growth and what blends or long vowel sounds he's not really getting yet. And yeah, I use that. Going into my assessment results, starting with my reading interview that I did with Alex at the beginning of the semester. So it was just a few questions regarding how he felt about reading, what makes you a good reader, what strategies do you use, things along those lines. So to start, I could definitely tell he wasn't too confident in reading, even though he said he did enjoy reading a lot, which is good. But most of his questions were just like really short answers, and he didn't really know how to answer the majority of the questions, like what he likes reading or what makes a good reader, things along those lines. And then going into my exit interview that I did recently at the end of the semester with him, he shared with me how now he feels a lot more confident. He didn't use those exact words, but overall I could tell he's feeling a lot more confident in his reading, and it definitely shows it. He shared with me that he has really liked everything we've done together, which made me so happy, and he feels that he is proud of himself because he really likes reading now. And I asked him a few things like what he learned from our time together, and he said definitely like chunking out the word and words he doesn't know, and as well as using pictures in stories to help with comprehension and help like with vocabulary words in the text on that page. Another assessment I did with Alex was a spelling inventory, specifically the Words Their Way elementary spelling inventory. So I did this with him at the beginning of our time together to assess where he was. He did very strong in short vowels, digraphs, blends, but he did struggle a lot with long vowels and other vowels and everything on from there. So from that, I was able to assess or see that his spelling stage fell within the middle within word pattern. He also spelled 5 out of 25 words correctly, and his feature points were 33 out of 62. So again, I did that with him at the beginning of our time together to see what his weaknesses were and what we needed to work on. And from that, after all of our practice on long vowels and other vowel sounds, which is what he needed help with, I did the Words Their Way elementary spelling inventory again with him to see how much he's grown. And he fell in between the inflected endings, which is the late within word pattern, also the early syllabus and affixes. So I was really proud of him because he got 4 out of 5 of his long vowels, and for his other vowels he got 5 out of 7. And he also was able to spell 12 out of 25 words right, where before it was only 5. So I also was very proud of him there. And his feature points were 45 out of 62. One other assessment I did with Alex was the QRI, or the Qualitative Reading Inventory. I did this with him at the beginning of our time together, and it really allowed me to see where he was as far as identifying words and comprehending the text successfully, or where he struggled. So the first time we did the QRI, when we did the word lists, he fell into level 1, so we went ahead and selected a level 1 text. And I would say his fluency, he did struggle. The prosody level that I gave him was 2, so he would only primarily use 2-word phrases when he read, and a lot of the times his word grouping would be very awkward. And going into the retelling portion, he was only able to retell 6 events or 6 things that happened in the story he read, so not that much. And for the questions we asked at the end, I noticed a lot of the time, as far as how he answered the questions, a lot of the details he gave me were kind of like made up. So as far as his comprehension, there was barely any, but he did answer 1 explicit question and 2 implicit. But going into the second time we did the QRI not too long ago, at the end of our time together, he did much better. So as far as where he landed, he with the word list, he went into the level 2. And when we read together, he is still awkward when sometimes or some portions when he reads when he doesn't really know a word. But as far as his word grouping or phrases, he is reading more words in one time span, if that makes sense. And then he was also able to retell 11 details about the story, which I was super excited about. And then for his questions, he was able to answer half of them. There was 8 questions. He was able to answer half of them explicitly, which I was super, super excited about, because that is a big step from only answering 1 question explicitly from the first time we did the QRI. The last assessment result that I collected from Alex was writing samples in our writing project that we worked on throughout our whole time together. So from the start, he definitely was really excited about this. He wanted to make his own book that we ended up doing. So from the start, we worked on planning out what we wanted our topic to be to start. And then we moved into the audience and how to consider them in our writing and how to better develop our purpose of what we were going to write about. And I used some strategies from my guided writing book. And then he participated in he did a little example book or like a rough draft of how he wanted his book to be with sticky notes. And then as much as he loves looking at illustrations in books, I allowed him to do that with his. So after drawing out the images and all the things he wanted to incorporate in his book, we went back and added more text to what he already had. And this definitely allowed him to expand in what he wanted to say to the reader. And then the finished product is all the way to the right. It is titled Make Friends Everywhere. And I wish I could read it all to you because it's an awesome book. But maybe one day it'll be published. For my teacher-parent letter, I started off with expressing a lot of gratitude towards them. Also, I expressed his strengths and where he still needs help, which would still be comprehension. He can definitely improve there still, as well as vocabulary. And I believe this starts off by reading to him more. So I provided 8 different texts that the parents or my CT can buy for him, or in the future he can buy for himself. And some of these texts or books we have read together, but he loved them so much I think he would definitely enjoy reading them again. And in conclusion, overall my time with Alex was so much fun. He became so much more confident in his reading and writing overall. It's so crazy to think about him at the beginning when I was doing the reading interview with him and just getting to know him compared to now. He's blossomed in many ways. He's developed ways to decode words, such as by chunking. So now I've noticed in his reading, he's like chunking or sounding out all the words when he doesn't know a word, rather than just guessing or moving along. He has improved in identifying long vowel sounds as shown in the ESI or spelling inventory I did. And he's getting better at comprehending what he reads, but definitely still needs to work on it. And he has gained respect I feel like he has gained respect for how much fun learning can be. One main message that I learned this semester that will definitely influence how I teach in the classroom, and my perspective as a teacher would be that hard work definitely pays off. Thinking about that all the tutoring sessions I did with Alex were the main cause of his growth definitely warms my heart. I have definitely grown in my confidence a lot when it comes to lesson planning, and I have the literacy blocks to thank for that. I would say at the beginning it was hard and it seemed like a lot, but week after week I almost kind of looked forward to it, planning with him and seeing what would be fun for him and what strategies to use, and it got easier and easier as it went on. And week after week, I gained experiences in providing meaningful instruction and learning strategies that were cultivated around my students' reading and writing needs. And doing that, I feel like I could do it with any student or all of my students in the future from what I've learned in this class. Thank you.